So, you've got pain on the front of one side of your hip during running or after running. And you're wondering to yourself, is this nerve pain? Is it a pinched nerve? Could it be a muscle strain? Perhaps it's the dreaded torn labrum. Maybe, just maybe, it's time for a hip replacement. You do run a lot after all, and all your friends and family know it's a hip replacement coming. You're 40. Just get that hip replaced already. Maybe it's a stress fracture. Maybe it's something in your head or another niggle you can just run through. When in doubt, power through, right? I would ask before pushing through, do you have any of the following symptoms on one side of your hip? 1, pain almost instantly while running on the downward or impact portion of the run stride. 2, if you stand on one leg bearing weight on the painful side and fire your glutes to tilt your pelvis upward, does it feel okay? Now shift your weight to the other leg and do the same thing. How'd that feel? Did you notice a pinch or a twinge of pain when you shifted off the bad side? Not during, but as you shifted the weight off the painful side of your hip. 3, now do a one-legged jump on the painful side. Hop up and down. Now hop side to side. Any twinge of pain there? 4, can you flex your glute while walking and tilt your pelvis up? So flex that glute, fire it, tilt that pelvis. Do you feel a good stretch in the front? Does it just a good kind of stretch, like there's a tight muscle on the front? A little twinge of pain similar to that, if you experienced that twinge before. 5, after you run, does your quad tighten up and cause you to limp for hours or days afterward? So this sounds like a drug commercial, and it's not, I swear. 6, have you had tightness down the outside of your quad on the affected leg, the leg that has the pain? Perhaps during your runs, perhaps at the start of a run, just in general, have you felt tightness there? I believe that muscle is the vastus lateralis. It's the outer quad muscle. Are any or all of these feelings subtle, kind of shallow, like it's nothing major, but for some reason it has you questioning running, has you sidelined, and now you're on YouTube searching for answers? Can you run through this pain like any other niggle? What is this pain? I can't say what's going on with you, but for me, it ended up being a stress fracture on the medial or compression side of my femoral neck. I'm making this video so you can learn from my experience and maybe save yourself time during recovery to get back to running all those miles you want to run. Let's get you back to running the miles sooner than me. First, some background on what got us here. We'll conclude with key takeaways I'd do differently, knowing what I know now, so you don't make the same mistakes as me and end up where I am. Background on what got us here. About me, I'm 42 years old, an ultra runner who might have a problem with moderation, as many ultra runners do. And I guess I'm not unique in having this problem, but what comes with this problem is a tendency to take on as much as I can. And I've shown some decent results in ultra marathoning, and at the time of this recording, last October I ran the Hennepin 100 with a time of 13 hours, 9 minutes, 43 seconds. This ended up being the 3rd fastest time in course history and the 10th fastest time of 2023 for a 100-mile distance in North America. Since then, I ran the Pistol 100 this past March with a time of 14:01:33, which is currently the Tennessee state record. And I believe the 4th or 5th fastest time for the year of 2024 at the moment. I say these things not to boast, but to give some backstory on where I am, kind of some perspective there with my training. While I've finished at the front of the pack, I've also finished in the mid-pack to back of the pack. And I've even run a 314-mile race across Tennessee, untrained at 235 pounds. Which, as you can see, is a little different than where I'm at right now. So again, I provide these as a backdrop for my training approach, as I know the effect that hard work and passion can have on a person's physical abilities. And I also know the power of a person's mind. what that can have on pushing themselves toward what's seemingly impossible. I love to compete, and I'm intensely motivated to reach my potential before the opportunity eclipses and slips away. I am 42 after all. This desire to catch this fleeting possibility or potential has me taking a more aggressive tack in training and maybe running more miles than most typically do so. So for training up to this point in June, I ran 100 to 120 miles a week for the most part. The schedule was typically 13 to 15 pavement miles most days before work, a 4-mile treadmill run at lunch 5 days a week. On weekends, I typically do a marathon distance long run on the road or trail. If the trail run was the long run, I'd do 3 to 4 hours typically. I was training for 3 upcoming races in 2024. Wasatch 100-mile endurance run, September 6th. No Business 100, October 24th. Desert Solstice 24-hour invitational, December 14th. Things were going well in training until they weren't. Early June, I noticed on the outer edge of my quad, my left quad, it was getting tighter. Nothing new, as this has been something that's arisen and passed from time to time. Just another niggle, right? About mid-June, I noticed more tightness. It was progressively worse tightness. It would arise and go away. I could warm up and get through it, and it would kind of fade away into the background. I chalked this tightness up to my left pelvis tilting downward, as it's done so before. And it's gone away. June, Saturday morning, I went on a fasted long run. I started out on the road before catching up with some friends on the trail. And I noticed that I felt particularly like garbage that morning. It was a garbage run. Maybe just one of those off runs, as we always have. We have off runs that pop up from time to time. The following day, that Sunday, I decided to do a little rehab strength. And the strength training consisted of me shifting from leg to leg and basically working on my pelvic tilt. I would fire my glute and get my pelvis to tilt upward, if that makes sense. Just basically fire the glute, tilt, fire, tilt. I was doing that, switching leg to leg. And in retrospect, I think this made it worse. Sunday, I took off otherwise. And then the following day, Monday, June 24th, is the day it happened. Started with a normal zone 2 morning run of 15 miles at about 120 beats a minute. No issues that morning. Lunch was similar. 4.25 miles on a treadmill at 123 beats a minute. Nice, easy, nothing major. No pain, no issues, so I went back to work. I think I worked at a stand-up desk, at my stand-up desk that afternoon. And I think I was hitting more of those pelvic tilt exercises while working. Finishing work, maybe 4 hours later, I noticed a slight limp in pain when I would walk away from my desk. The quad and hip both felt tight, and the limp lasted about a day or so, and it seemed to be worse after standing up at my desk and walking around. This pain and limp was enough to make me decide to cross-train the remainder of the week, which was an elliptical and rowing. I did a test run 4 days later on the track, a nice easy 6 miles. The run started out with tightness. The limp lingered for 2 days or so, and I took more time off running. This time, 6 days of cross-training before running a 5K with my son on July 3rd. This race is a Knoxville staple. It's the Fireball Moonlight Classic 5K. It takes place at sunset. Just a beautiful, iconic race. The run did not go well either. The pain was here from the start, getting worse through the race. And I'm not gonna lie, I felt like an imposter. I felt imposter syndrome at the start of the race. It just didn't feel right. I ended up just running with my son, which was fun, but he was also riding the struggle bus, and so we rode in together. And every time he slowed to a walk, I secretly rejoiced. And I would also be lying if I said I didn't bury my sorrows in ice cream, cookies, candy bars afterward. This was perhaps the first 5K that I almost did not finish, or DNF'd. I had the temptation on a 5K, and 5Ks can suck, but not when you're running 13-minute miles. Anyway, so it goes. Fast forward to early September, and I've attempted one test run since. The hip pain It lingers. It lets me know it's here from time to time, just in my day-to-day waking life. And I've been on crutches now for 2.5 weeks, pushing 3 weeks, with no exercise at all during this period. As for my races, I've had to drop Wasatch 100 and No Business 100. And at the time of recording, Wasatch 100 is actually running right now. And the fear of missing out is indeed real. And now I'm holding on to a semblance of hope that I'll have a runway long enough to train to be ready to race Desert Solstice in December. If my orthopedic doctor's face is any indication of my odds of towing the line, these odds are questionable. That said, he doesn't know what I'm capable of, but I've also got to be realistic and smart. And I'm afraid whether or not I run Solstice is going to be a weeks out to days out decision, which is okay. And that's okay. And to be honest, and that's okay has become a mantra of mine through this process. And I guess in general, it's kind of a good mantra for life, right? All right. So I've had all the symptoms described above. And initially, this is where this video comes in. I'd hate for you to be in the same situation as me, because initially I thought this was a pinched femoral nerve. It's what it felt like, a dull pinching sensation during downward stride of my foot, mostly while doing de-weighting or pushing off the hip. I'd feel it both on impact of running and then also just shifting my weight off the hip. Google, YouTube, ChatGPT all collaborated with this narrative I had. And I could visualize the mechanism of that pinching nerve as my pelvis tilted downward. It felt real. I also had the feeling that this strength prehab session got some muscles firing funny and aggravated and made it worse that Sunday after that long run. And it did aggravate it all right, but not for that reason. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole. I asked friends. I did strength training for a couple weeks to see if it could improve. No improvement. Weeks pass. I went to a PT and did specialized strength. We worked toward carefully executed test runs. No improvement. Weeks pass. I went to a muscle activation specialist in Cincinnati, and while he was awesome and insightful, as was my PT that I went to before this didn't help either. My wife tried to nudge me to go to an orthopedic walking clinic early in the process. Shout out to Knoxville Orthopedic Clinic and Dr. Joshua Johnson. I should have done this sooner, but I didn't want to go in to someone who was knife happy. And I've also heard that runners can have asymptomatic tears, and I wasn't looking for hip surgery anytime soon. Meanwhile, the strength training continued. I was feeling huge improvements in my glute strength while working toward one-legged pistol squats because I'm smart. I was packing ladders up and down stairs, installing ceiling fans for my wife. I ended up going to the ortho after all. And while it took some time getting authorized and into the MRI, the results did indeed surprise me. It was a stress fracture. And it's a stress fracture of my femoral neck on the underside of the femur neck. To find this out was shocking to me because I figured I'd know deep down that I had a stress fracture. I also figured it would be more painful than that, or the pain would be sharp or instant. I've had broken bones before, and I've always known they were broken. It's something I can feel inside, for lack of better words. But this feeling was not this. This was dull. It was a shallow pain. And the feedback it gave me was slow. And what I mean by this is that it was never clear what aggravated this pain. Did the assault bike I was riding make it worse? Hard to tell. Did the standing desk make it worse? Hard to tell. Did carrying the ladder up the stairs to change ceiling fans out make it worse? You get the point. So, here I am. Here you are. Anyway, 3 weeks in, crutches. So here I am. 3 weeks on crutches, 6 to 8 weeks of recovery time total. I'm treading lightly toward being able to run again sometime in the not so distant future, but seemingly so distant future of mid-October, maybe late October. I'll document what I think caused it elsewhere, if there's interest. I'll also document the recovery plan and maybe get into the specifics about nutrition and training. For this narrative, though, I'll keep it to what happened and save you the time. In that hip, again, and only this time it intensified and it got worse as the run went on. I scrapped it, called it, and went home and licked my wounds, essentially. But afterward, this time, the limp was worse. It was so bad, I was getting looks at the grocery store when I went out with my wife and daughter. And the looks I was getting may have had more to do with the fact I was holding my puppy while I shuffled through the store, earning my nickname with my wife and daughter of the dog father. They were giving me shit as I walked through the store. Kind of funny. Good times, good times. So here I am, 3 weeks on crutches and 6 to 8 weeks of total recovery time. I'm treading lightly toward being able to run again, perhaps mid to late October. I'll document what I think caused it elsewhere. If there's interest, I'll also document the recovery plan, maybe some specifics about nutrition and training. For this narrative, I'll just keep it to what happened and what not to do if you have something similar to what I have going on. So if you have any of those symptoms listed up there, I would recommend getting into an orthopedic doctor sooner rather than later. In my experience with orthopedic doctors, they have not been knife happy, and finding something definitive sooner rather than later would be a huge benefit to you. Here are a few things to avoid if you think you have a stress fracture, if any of those symptoms pop out. Again, I'm just a guy speaking about his own experience, wanting others to not go through what I've gone through. So this is no shape, form, or means of medical advice, just my own experience. The first thing I would do is don't run on it. If you feel like you have any of these symptoms, don't run on it. It could reactivate the injury. And when I ran on mine, the sensation was dull, almost instant. So I could feel it in first, second, or third step. You get that? I'd say stop it. If the feeling's subtle enough to tempt you to try to run through it, like many other niggles, which I'd caution against. And there was a moment there, a couple weeks before my diagnosis, I thought about just trying to power through and run through. Just thinking, okay, it's in my head. It's funny, the lies we tell ourselves. Second piece of advice here would be, depending on the fracture location and severity, surgery may be needed. Information I've seen indicates some stress fractures impede blood flow, causing portions of the femur to die, requiring surgery too. So that just kind of reiterates the first point I'm making, to not run on it and make it worse. The third piece of advice I'd offer is be careful about one-legged or unilateral strength training. Carrying heavy objects up and down stairs, anything that exerts an undue amount of force on that one leg. Any undue force on the one limb could make matters worse. And again, the feedback's so subtle, it's so subtle on that, I couldn't even tell what was bothering or aggravating it, but clearly it has for weeks. We're 10 weeks into this? The fourth piece of advice I'd have is what got you here won't get you there. Meaning, you're not going to grind your way out of the problem you've ground yourself into. It's going to take rest and recovery. Resting halfway is not the same as taking full-on rest. And I found this out the hard way through trying to cross-train and do things. And I finally just said, screw it, rest up. And it's been good for me. You're not going to cheat the system. If your body needs that rest, it's going to get that rest one way or the other. You'll pay the price. Choosing to do it early and completely is my piece of advice for you. One last final piece of advice is if you find yourself injured, whether or not it is a stress fracture, take care of yourself. Be kind toward yourself and others. Especially, be kind to yourself and others, both. I was going to say especially others, but you know how it goes. It's full circle, right? Something us runners can also do is run from painful feelings. Injury is a good time, and it's been a good time for me to reflect on some of these things. The desire to flee some of these sensations that we want to get away from. Look at them, shine a spotlight on them. And also just to realize that injury is a good time to hang out with these feelings. And recognize you don't need to run or work out to earn inherent value for yourself or in yourself. You're okay, you're complete. Who you are, how you are. You don't need to run and work out every single day. Nor is your day going to be ruined if you do. Sleep in. Eat the ice cream cone. Eat the candy. Be happy. So yeah, hopefully this video is helpful. Thank you for following along. If you have any questions at all or want to hear anything else from me, Let me know in the comments, and you can also find me on my Instagram at Stayman, that's Stayman, and on Strava at Chris Stayman. And if you feel so inclined, you can stalk me on Ultra Sign Up, which is what us ultra runners seem to do as well. That's kind of like when you click with someone really well. You stalk them on Ultra Sign Up. It's like, I saw you on there. And hope regardless of what you're going through, you get better. And we'll catch you more later maybe on the flip.